Good afternoon. My name is Philip Wharton. I am a trainer with It's Learning, and it's a pleasure to see you this afternoon and to be talking with you about learning languages with It's Learning. I am a trainer with It's Learning, as I said. However, I used to be a teacher, and I actually trained as a language teacher many years ago now, and I worked in international schools for several years, and my last position was head teacher of an international school. But my passion has always been working with young people and teaching languages is always something that fascinated me. I taught French and German and EAL as well. So I've got some examples for you this afternoon to show you with the It's Learning platform. This session is aimed at teachers, for learners of languages, and I'll be focusing today on engaging and teaching and planning as well. As you see here on my screen, we've got the It's Learning wheel that we use. As you know, It's Learning is a learning management system, and it also encompasses assessing and reflecting on work and reporting, of course. But as I said, what we're focusing today on is learners, and with that in mind, we're thinking about planning lessons, engaging those learners, teaching languages so that those learners can learn the new skills that we want them to. And what we're going to be thinking about particularly is meeting new vocabulary, practicing language skills, and also a little bit of thinking about revising for tests and exams. Always having the 4 skills of language learning in our minds, which are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. You know that as language teachers, and so we're going to be keeping that in mind as we work through today's examples. I'm going to split the session today into 2 main parts. I'm going to give you a really quick tour of the platform for those of you who are less familiar with it, and then we're going to think about how we can use the platform to support the 4 skills of speaking, reading, writing, and listening. I'm going to show you how to make a few resources, and then the last part, the second part, is using and making learning paths, which is a super useful thing to do on our platform, the learning path, to encourage learners to work at their own pace, and also to encourage independence and collaboration in learning. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to dive right in a second. I'm just going to end this slideshow here, and we're going to go over to our platform. And here I am logged in into my platform as Maximilian Dickinson. Maximilian is one of my pupils. And as I mentioned in the intro just now, I'm going to give you a very quick tour of the platform before we go into the examples that we can have on the platform of learning languages. So for those of you that don't know, here is the It's Learning platform. It looks a bit empty on Max's. He's just joined the school, so he's only a member of 1 course. He's a member of French, German, and EAL course. He has a main menu at the top here. This is the home page. He can see an overview of his courses in this tab here, any groups that he belongs to, projects that he's working on, and also he has a calendar here as well. On the right hand side at the top, he has a bell which lights up, bell symbol, which lights up when he has an announcement that somebody has written in one of his courses that alerts him to that. This little symbol here is the chat function, so he can send messages to his course mates or his teachers, and likewise they can send messages to him. He has his own settings here. He can change his password, his profile picture, etc., etc. That all is contained in the menu up here when you click on this part of the platform. And as I mentioned, this is the course overview. This is one possibility for a start page in itslearning, and the other is the updates here. And here he sees recent updates made by his teachers, any tasks that he has been assigned appear here, as well as events that are in his calendar. They'll be here on the right-hand side. As I said at the beginning, very quick tour of the platform. Hopefully you're all itslearning users already, you know the platform. So let's dive into some examples of how we can use the platform to teach languages. We're going to need some more space, I think, to do that, and you don't want to see my ugly mug all evening, so I will turn off my camera and you can then have much more space on your screen to see the platform. If you do have any questions as we move along, please ask. You can write in the chat here in GoToWebinar. You can also unmute yourself and ask a question. And at the end of this session, which is going to be a maximum of an hour long, then I'll leave some time when I'll turn off the recording and you can ask any questions that you have then. Or we can finish a little bit early if you don't have any questions. So we're going to look at some examples of how we can use the platform to teach French, German, and EAL. My apologies if you teach different languages. French, German, and EAL were the languages that I used to teach, and so that's why I focused on those today. Maximilian sees that he's got a new announcement in this course. So when he clicks on that course, hopefully you're familiar with this view. This is the course overview page with an announcement from his teacher, Mrs. Rattray, that they're going to meet in room 23 this week. She's also welcomed the students with a different announcement here. And like I said, Maximilian's symbol here, the bell symbol, will light up when he has a new announcement from his teacher. It is possible to allow pupils to also write announcements, and those will also appear on the course overview page. If you'd like to see that, we can always have a look at that later on, how to do that. We're going to focus on the 4 key skills of language learning today. As I mentioned in the introduction, the first 2 skills we're thinking about are listening skills and also reading skills. So we're going to dive into this plan here. As you can see, it's a French one. And what the students are being asked to do here, if you don't speak French, is to read aloud a poem here, and they're going to be noting down vocabulary that they perhaps are unfamiliar with, and then they're going to learn together what the vocab means. The vocab is contained here in this very handy tool, which is a note. And if I click into this note, here is a poem called Sur le chemin de l'école, and a wonderful feature for language learning is the immersive reader in itslearning. You might be familiar with it. If you're not, I would encourage you to check it out, because what you can do is you can press the play button down here, and you can then have the poem read out to you. You can change your settings here to have a female or a male voice. You can change the speed at which the piece of text is written. Here on the top right hand side, you have other text preferences. So you can increase the text size or decrease it, increase the spacing between, or decrease the spacing between the lines, change the font. For accessibility, you can change the background color of the note here. As we know, many pupils prefer it when they can read text from a different colored background other than white. And so you can change those preferences here. And then in the second section at the top, just here, we can highlight syllables for those just starting to learn a language. We can highlight different parts of speech, also very handy. And we can show the labels for those parts of speech here. Debout is highlighted as it is an adjective. The last section over here is also very handy. You could focus in on particular lines of the text. You can turn on as well the picture dictionary. I'm not sure whether it will work here because this is, oh yes, it will. Here we are. So we have the word dictionary for cartable, school bag. And so you can highlight particular words and then see a picture which obviously denotes that word. Also very handy. If you're super stuck, you can use the translate option and translate the text into a whole variety of different languages, which I would say would be a last resort because obviously we want our learners to think about what the text means independently without having to translate into another language. What we can also do is use a second tool here, which is the page. And on the page here, you'll notice that Maximilian, even though he is a pupil in this course, he can add a content block. And the teacher has said that he can note down, or he should note down any vocabulary that he doesn't know, and that together they'll do some research, perhaps using dictionaries or a different method, and they will then translate the words that were unfamiliar to the learners. So this can be this permission the permission to edit this page here can be given to all the learners in the group, and then they can work together to make a list of vocabulary that they would like to find out the meaning of. The third example I'm going to show you here for listening and reading is using another tool in itslearning, and that's the test tool. You don't have to use a test as a test. Here, he's got 20 minutes. We won't use all that time, obviously. But what he needs to do is to listen to this song that's made by the French rapper MC Solar. And there is a YouTube video of MC Solar's song, Nouveau West down here, which if you don't know the song, I would very much encourage you to listen to. It's a wonderful song from the 90s. And you have the text of Nouveau Western that is underneath here. And he will listen to the song, and as he listens to the words of the song, then he will fill in the words that he hears. Here you see that we don't have any assistance for poor Maximilian. He just has to kind of guess the words, guess the spellings. However, what you can do is create the test in such a way that there is a drop-down menu instead of an empty box here, and the learners can choose from a list of words the one that they think is the most likely one to fit in the gap. Obviously, the aim here is to fill in all of the missing words so that he has then a full answer and a full verse of rap to MC Solar's song. We'll skip on to the next question. And here he has an article to read about the ex-French president Georges Pompidou, and there is a multiple choice question here to answer. And again, he's been asked to note down any new vocabulary in the vocabulaire side. So we're using both the poem and the words from this article and the words from the song. And we're going to use the page element to write down any new vocabulary. The article here is linked. It's a Wikipedia article about Georges Pompidou, and we don't want to translate it. And yeah, the learners will read this article and then answer the question. We're going back to the plan now. We're going to see a different example. And this time we're going to swap languages. We're going to think about a speaking exercise. And here we have an English plan for those learning EAL, English as an additional language. And here, as it says, they're going to be exploring, like we are, the reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. And we have two tasks here to do. An assignment where they will be evaluated on their listening skills, and to answer the assignment, the student simply needs to click, and then they've been asked to use the microphone or the video tool here in order to record their answer. So they will click. They'll be asked to allow itslearning to have access, and they can record their audio, they can record their answer. For some reason in itslearning, I'm not quite sure why, but I've never got to the bottom of it, but recordings have to be 11 seconds long. I think it's 11 seconds, let's see. Yes, and only after 11 seconds can you stop the recording and upload it. But there you are, it is as it is, and then the student will then submit the work to their teacher. We have a warning sign here. I'm not quite sure why that is, but ordinarily it would work, that we can upload our work. Here, different version, they can answer this assignment to interview a partner about their free time activities and record their work using the video function instead of the microphone. Just to see that it does work, I'm here, and the student can record their work. Again, it has to be 11 seconds long, and then they will upload, save their work, and submit it to their teacher for marking or for feedback. We're going to come back to this plan later and have a look at the learning path that was in our earlier introduction. But I wanted to look at another speaking activity that we could, as a suggestion. And that one is here, another German one this time. And the students here are encouraged to think about practicing for tests in the future, and also a little grammar tip they have here, thinking about conjunctions in German. And really simple as an activity is this task. And this is just a simple tongue twister in German that the children can practice. I've seen this very often in schools, both in the UK and in Germany, where I live, that when students are introduced to itslearning, videos are sometimes embedded just as something to practice. It can be a song, it could be like here, a tongue twister, it could be a piece of information that's relevant to the next piece of learning in the class. And simply all the children need to do, all the learners need to do is to click yes to feedback to their teacher that they have completed this little task. And in this case, Maximilian has completed his pronunciation training. And he can then perhaps show that off to his classmates in his next class. The next one is to focus on a different skill, and that's the skill of writing. Again, this is a simple example where the pupils again have been given access to add content blocks to the page element in itslearning. And what they need to do here is to write in 3 to 5 sentences what they when they were younger, what they have learned as children. So perhaps it's to do with when they learned to ride a bike, when they learned to swim, etc. And what the children are asked to do is to add a block and then write a sentence. Here, a learner is explaining that he wanted to sing and to give concerts, so he learned the guitar. And here, this learner here was learning to be an explorer outside, and learned lots of things with his group: how to set fire, how to build a fire, sorry, how to read maps, and how to sleep in the woods. And then again here, somebody's actually used the rich content editor in the page element and used the microphone button that we just saw before to record their answer instead of writing it. And then what they'll do in class is they'll look at these and they'll try and guess who wrote what. So just a fun activity to practice writing skills. And then of course, as a class, you could then analyze these sentences, correct them as necessary, and then they can write new ones that are better versions, perhaps grammatically, than their first attempts. We're going to switch now to the teacher's perspective. And I wanted to show you quickly how to make a couple of these resources. Perhaps you aren't familiar with them. And here I have a plan making resources, because we always work in plans in itslearning when we're making stuff. And well, nearly always, I say. I'll explain why I say nearly always later. And we're focusing on teaching here and planning, so we're going to add some resources. The first one is a note. The note isn't immediately visible when you want to add resources to a plan. You have to click on Show All and Note, and then quite simply you give your note a title. You can write a text, or of course you can cut and paste the text into this space here. And as we saw at the beginning, then that can be read aloud to your learners, can be analysed by your learners. It's a really simple but very effective tool to use when you're introducing texts to your language learners. You have here the rich content editor that we saw earlier on. You can alter if the text is bold or in italics or underlined, rather like on Word. You can change background colors and the colors of texts. Over here is perhaps more exciting. You can do things like add links and links to resources, pictures, the microphone tool and video tool we have here. And we could also use this round circle just here to embed a URL, the web address of a video from YouTube, and that can be embedded into this field here without adverts, which is very useful. We're also thinking about adding a page, perhaps. Page is immediately visible when you click on Add, and you can create a new one very easily. You need to give it a title. Quite simply, then what you do is you add content blocks to your page, and you can add files or individual images. You can make a poll and ask the other users, the other participants who will see this page, you can ask them to vote on something. But I really like to use the rich content editor and adding text and pictures, as we've seen before on the page. You can delete this one, you can cut it if you don't want it anymore, you can edit it if you want to, and you can click on this little palette here to change the color for this particular content block. Maybe you're adding lots of different content blocks and they're all of one topic. You can then make them one harmonious color, and then you could have a poll that you set up. You could make that purple, so that then the students, especially younger ones, can kind of orientate themselves a bit better as to what each block means, what subject it is about. And to save your page, all you need to do is click close, and it is automatically saved in your plan. A handy thing to do, as you saw from Max's point of view, is to add content block. That means that the students can add new blocks to your page that you have created, that they can edit it effectively. Perhaps you don't want them to do that. That's fine, because it's not actually an automatic setting. What you need to do to enable your students to be able to add and edit this page and not just view it, you need to click on the 3 dots, the 3 points, and permissions. You're then taken to a menu, and you can select who can edit the element, and you can choose individual groups here. I've got all my students, or I've split them up into 2 groups, Orange 1 and Orange 2. I also have a list. It's a small list, admittedly, but I have a list of all the participants in this French, German, and EAL course, and I can click them individually, add them over here, save, and then Lucy Abrams would have the permission to be able to edit my page, but nobody else. Let's jump back quickly to our slide here that we saw at the beginning when we were thinking about, as I mentioned before, having a quick tour of the platform, how the platform supports the 4 skills. We've seen some examples of that, and we've also quickly seen how we can make resources. If you have any questions right now, please feel free to ask. And if not, that's also fine. What we will do is continue on with the second portion of our session today, and that is using and making learning paths. I don't see any questions in the chat at the moment, so I think I will continue, if that's all right with you. So we'll jump back into the platform, and we'll go back to Max here, and we're going to be investigating how we can use learning paths and also make learning paths using the itslearning platform. I have grouped my plans here in my French, German, and EAL course into topics here. And one of the topics is in German here, Lernen und Wiederholen, learn and revise, or practice or repeat. And one way here that we can make a learning path, which is really an individual way that students can progress at their own tempo through activities, is using, again, the page element. And here we are looking at an IB ab initio German class, so older students who are learning German from scratch for their International Baccalaureate exam, which is a 2-year course, and they're beginning next month to practice for their German speaking and writing written exams. So what I've done here, as you see, you can see a page, you can see a PowerPoint, and you can see a Word document. But we'll come back to those documents in a moment or so. But let's look at the page first. And as I said, this is a learning path. So we have here a series of activities that these students can work through at their own pace. So first of all, a description of what they would need to do, describe a picture for the speaking exam, which is part of the IB requirements. When you're starting to learn the language, so having a physical description of the picture, an interpretation of that picture. And they are reminded here that you can only get full marks if you identify the topic and link it to German culture. So that means, of course, linking the picture to something that you're learning about Germany. So perhaps, as it suggests here, linking back a picture about food to the eating habits of the German people. You've got some useful vocabulary here that the teachers put together in the second section. And here's the important bit where they have to interpret what's going on. So, link it back, as I mentioned earlier on, to Germany, to statistics about Germany, and what they think about the picture, not just a description about what's in the picture, but what they think about the picture. So all of these things, these blocks here, these parts of this activity, I would say need to be practiced in the class. This vocabulary can be put into context. And lastly here we have a reminder of the task and then the picture itself. So here they're asked to describe the picture using the vocabulary that they've seen already and they've practiced. So they're going to be talking obviously about this man who's possibly deciding whether to eat something healthy or not. And that could then be linked back to how healthily the Germans eat. And perhaps they've looked into eating habits and how they've changed over the years. For example, I know that the German population eat vastly less meat than they used to. And that's a trend that they could perhaps mention in their description. And then they're going to be asked to try more descriptions. So if you remember, there was a PowerPoint and a Word document in this plan. And here's a link to those documents. So they don't need to click out of the page to get to this PowerPoint. And they don't need to click out of this page to get to the Word document. They can open it in PowerPoint for the web. That means it would open up in a separate window. But they can also just look at the slides here. So you've got the title slide, the eating habits of Germans, and then here pictures that they are going to describe. So 2 people here making breakfast. What can they take from this and this image, and also this image? And how can they link that back to German culture and what they know about the German eating habits? As I mentioned, also they have a link to a Word document. We're back in the page now, and they're asked to write their answers down. Yes, this is a speaking activity, but it's also important to practice writing skills. So here they have an empty Word document. And they can open this Word document in Word for the web. Each student has a copy here. and they would then either download the document, or if they've been given permission to do so, then they can write directly online into the document itself, and everything's saved then in itslearning. So that's one example of a learning path, how students can access materials and work through those materials at more or less their own pace. Let's look at a different example now. And if you remember, the previous example that we used was using the page element in itslearning, but this one's actually using the specific element of the learning path. And it looks like this. This is a symbol for it, a red square with a white arrow. And this is actually a business English learning path. The content is quite basic, do forgive me, but the student simply needs to press on Start to access the learning path. This is aimed at a German group of learners who are learning here. They're learning business English. And here, the second element that has appeared is the another page here. They've got articles to read, they've got a video to watch. And as you see just here, which didn't happen before, I'm not quite sure why, but automatically the new step becomes available. You've got a business English article here that the students can access. And then they have a poll here that's been put into the page. So the question is here, can you introduce yourself to somebody in English in a business context? And the students will need to answer that question and vote. As they do so, then the students and teachers will be able to see a pie chart of the answers. So immediate feedback then is available on this question. The third step here is a task here with more information. Again, a link to an article, and then a link actually here to a page where they can write down new vocabulary. A new step here appears, and here we have a test. A quick test, 4 minutes, only got one attempt. And here they're asked in what kind of register would they use when they're speaking. Would they use informal or formal language here? And Maximilian is answering incorrectly, but it's all right. So the greeting term here in a formal context, is it hiya or good morning or hello mate? So let's say it's hello mate, and complete the test. Are we sure? Yes, we are. We're ready here. And the test result will come automatically when he refreshes his test. Unfortunately, he got 0%, which is pretty depressing for poor Maximilian. And what he doesn't know is that because he got such a poor result, a new step has appeared automatically. So here what he needs to do is to answer an assignment and write a paragraph about what he has learned in his English lesson so far. And perhaps write a dialogue. Could be he writes a dialogue about in business English language or something. And as you see here, the work is saving automatically. It's Maximilian's copy, and everything is saved automatically in the platform. He can then submit that work to his teacher for assessment and continue on with his learning path. And here we've got to the end of the learning path, which is just a simple thank you. So he's completed it. He can still view the resources afterwards, which is really helpful by clicking open here. So even though he's done the learning path, he can still go back to it if he needs to later. But let's go over to the teacher's perspective and have a look at how we make a learning path, and particularly how we can introduce these extra automatic steps that appear. As you remember, Maximilian had to do an extra piece of work because he didn't do very well in his task, and I'm going to show you how you can set that up. So I'm logged in now as a teacher, again in the platform. Here's my French, German, and EAL course. I've been sent some work to do, some work to correct. Sorry. As we saw, our student Maximilian sent work to me as the teacher. So here is the work that I will have to correct. We're not going to look at that right now because we're going to look at this learning path. And what we could do is we could go into a plan and we could click show all, and we could create a learning path here. And what a learning path is a collection of resources that the students work through, as we saw, but they work through at their own pace. The problem with this particular part in the platform for me, though, is that you have to add resources that are either from your computer, from a different course, or from the It's Learning library. You only have these three options, and I think that's a bit limiting, perhaps. So instead of working here, and instead of working in the plan, which I said we always do, but I also said we nearly always do, instead of working there, we're going to work in the resources section. And we're going to make a collection of resources that we are then going to turn into a learning path. So I've already started, and it's the last one here. I've made a folder. What I did is click add. In this section, I clicked folder to add a folder. And then I had an empty folder. And in that folder, I have then added lots of resources. So I've made a PowerPoint, I've had a task here, and this is all about, again, the eating habits of the Germans. And so I've got a video here about how lunch is dying out in Germany. People are not eating lunch together anymore. I've got a menu here from the Hofbräuhaus. I live in Munich, and the Hofbräu is in Munich here, with some comprehension questions. And I've got a test, and then I've got an extra step for those who don't do very well in the test, and then a dialogue at the end that the students are going to brainstorm together. So this is a collection of resources, as I've said. And simply what you do is you keep adding however many resources you want. So you click on add. So we're now in our folder. We click on add. And here we see the whole palette of activities and resources that we can add from It's Learning, or perhaps even folders from your own computer. So you can just add as many as you want and keep adding until you're happy with your folder full of resources. And to make a learning path, it's very easy. As very often in It's Learning, you have these three magical dots which you click, and it's the first option, which is Make Learning Path. And here you can see then the view becomes a bit different. So you've got then the beginnings of your learning path in steps. If you think, oh, I need to add a different resource, that's fine. You can click on the three dots again and just make the folder a folder again. And then you can press add and add more resources. But I want to make my learning path particularly interesting are the steps here 4 and 5, because I have options. Here we have an assignment, which is the comprehension questions that I had. And here I can choose to allow the students to progress if they submit or complete their activity. So perhaps they don't have to actually send it to me, they just need to do it, and then they can go on to the next step. But if I want them to submit it, obviously they need to complete the work and then also send it to me. So they need to be very sure that it's of a high enough quality for me to assess it. And then the key one here is the test as well. So you could ask the students to complete the test, or you could assign a certain percentile that they need to achieve in order to progress to the next step. And the next step here would either be step 7, so the dialogue, or step 6. Like we saw with Maximilian, he didn't do very well in his test, so he had to do effectively an extra step of practice. So this is great for differentiation, for supporting those learners who might be a bit weaker in a particular area, because the ones who are a bit more high-flying can go straight on to the final stage in the process, the steps, but those who need more scaffolding, more support, can receive that if they have this extra step. So you can design this learning path to include that extra step for those who need it. The last thing that you need to do is to complete the path. So I'm happy with it, I'm done, and I make it visible to my students. It won't be immediately visible though, or very easy to find, I would say. It wouldn't be very easy to find because it would be under this resources section, and we don't really want our pupils to be fishing around in the resources section. We'd much rather have them working in plans. So let's put our learning path into a plan so that they can find it easier, and we'll put it into our IB plan. We'll click on add, and because we saved it in resources, it's in the course somewhere. So we'll click on course to find it, and here it is. I see the whole list of resources that I've made for this whole course, but here's my learning path that I've just made. I can save it, and there it is in my plan. Let's just double check it's definitely there. So we'll go back to Maximilian's log in here. Here we are back in Maximilian's platform. He's going to be looking for his plan for German ab initio. And yes, here we are. Here's the learning path that we just made. And he can start and work through his activities. We won't go through them all now, but he will spend at least 15 seconds here looking at his objectives before the next activity is going to appear very soon. As I say, we're not going to go through all of them. Here we are. Here's the next activity, etc., etc. And Maximilian can work through those at his own pace. Let's pop back to our agenda very quickly. And we can see here that we've actually come to the end of it. It is 20 past 4 in the UK, 20 past 5 here. So we're bang on time. And yeah, I'd just like to ask if you have any thoughts or questions or comments. Now is the time to share them. I'd love to hear what you think of what you've seen today. Hopefully it's useful for you. Does anyone have any questions about what you've seen today? I don't see anything in the chat. That's absolutely fine. But I hope you've had some decent inspiration this afternoon. And I hope you've taken something away with you so that you can continue practicing those vital skills of speaking, listening, writing, and reading with your language learners. And I could only encourage you to make a learning path. It's a great tool for differentiating work, for enabling children, students, and learners to work together. And also have a go at making the other resources that you saw today. Perhaps the note, you haven't used that yet, or the page, or even the assignment or the task. Those are all great resources that you can use when you're using the platform. All that remains to say then is thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and have fun making your resources. Contact your key account manager if you would like to schedule trainings. We have online help as well that you can always access if you have questions. And I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Thanks very much. Bye bye.